Sorry for being almost 30 seconds late. John had to fix his hair. That's a quote from him, so don't attack me for that comment. Um,
It looks
so,
good though, right? Right.
yes. Welcome to another live stream from Worklife. Today we're going to be talking about inclusivity by design, a blueprint for business growth. We have an expert on all things marketing, diversity, and getting a job that you won't hate. Brianna Doe going to be here today. That's not how she markets herself, but that's how I tell people when she's not in the room how she markets herself. Nobody takes me seriously either way either. So enough of my rambling. I'm Evan Patterson, pronouns are he, they. I'm the community marketing leader here at Worklife. While I try to get the music to play in the background, I promise I'm qualified to work here. And this man over here can introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about what Worklife is.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to another weekly session here. My name is John Alarcon, one of the co-founders at Worklyfe. A little bit about Worklife. We are all about helping people find their personal happiness equation. So the things that matter to them in their life. And what we want to do is have companies support that directly. So we have companies run their incentive, their recognition, and their fringe benefits programs through our software and through our platform to directly fund the things that matter to their people. So that's a little bit about us.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, let's bring on Brianna Doe so we can talk about all the fun stuff behind creating a diverse and inclusive culture, which is not just good for being a human being, but also good for your bottom line. And so let's bring her on. Hi, Brianna. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much once again for being on the show. Really appreciate you. And also congratulations. You just launched Verbatim, which I know we'll dive into the journey of that, but feel free to tell the folks at home or those listening to this against their will in the car because their spouse wants to listen to this, what Verbatim is.
Perfect. Yes. So Verbatim is a digital marketing agency. I recently launched it with my business partner, Alexis Scott, and we specialize in demand generation, content marketing, and LinkedIn influencer marketing. So Influenced by Verbatim is an arm of the agency that focuses on the influencer piece, and it's about bridging the gap between brands and creators and helping them have solid, successful partnerships.
I love this. John, don't replace me.
Well, like, you can go, actually.
Wow, this isn't a live stream. This is a job interview to replace Evan.
Surprise!
I've been gaslit. You can hire them for the man gen. Leave the rest to me, John. Leave the rest to me.
That's what we were thinking. So we were talking about it before you hopped on.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Well, thank you for being here. John, you had some questions regarding the journey to creating Verbatim that I do not have in front of me. Would you like to go over?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just super curious to hear more as a starting point, just how you got to Verbatim.
Yeah.
I know you've been in marketing for a long time, and just curious what that journey was like, what prompted you to strike off on your own, and all the things leading up to this moment for you.
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely been a long time coming. As you mentioned, I've been in marketing for a long time, about 12 years at this point. And for context, I always had a side gig. I was always freelancing or working as like a fractional marketer on the side, but I never just took that full time. And I've primarily been working in tech for the past like 5 or 6 years. And I just started to realize that I wasn't sure I wanted to work for somebody else anymore. I wanted to be able to build something for my own and like work on my own dream. At first, I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know if that meant quitting my job right away, if that just meant something I do when I'm like 40 or 50, whatever the case may be. But about a year ago or 8 months or so, I hired a career coach because I was really determined to see what my blind spots were in my own career. Like, how could I be a stronger leader, a stronger employee? Why was I so unhappy, like in most of my roles lately? And I remember on the very first call, she asked me a ton of questions. And near the end, she goes, okay, well, honestly, it doesn't sound like you want to work in corporate anymore at all. So we have 2 directions we can go, right? We can focus on what you originally hired me for, which is understanding those blind spots and improving in whatever areas you want, or we can start planning out your corporate exit. And I immediately said, I want to exit corporate and I want to build my own dream. So that was the first step. It was really exciting and really scary. And I immediately knew I didn't want to do it on my own. I wanted a business partner that I really respect and trust. And Alexis was the first and only person who came to mind that I'd want to build this with. And we just decided to build it on the in the areas that we really enjoy, which is demand gen, influence marketing, and content. So here we are. Verbatim has launched.
Amazing. And I mean, you're about a month old now, right? Is that
2 weeks?
2 weeks? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
I was rounding up. But
Sure.
yeah, would love to hear a little bit about, just kind of like the last couple weeks and last couple months as you've been, kind of intentionally creating this. What's that been like?
It's been really exciting and challenging in a good way. Before we officially launched, Alexis and I sat down and figured out, okay, what are our long-term goals, right? We're going to launch, we're a 2-person agency to start, but when we think 1 year from now, 5 years from now, what does this agency actually look like? And we both know that we want to grow it. Like, we want to have a full-fledged, full-service agency, but we're employing people that are passionate about marketing and helping mission-driven brands. And so knowing that from the very beginning has been really helpful in helping us start to build that foundation, even though it's just the two of us. I think this is actually the perfect time to work on company culture. And so figuring out what that looks like for us, how we're going to determine success when we do start hiring people, how can we set them up for success and empower them. It's been really exciting to think long-term.
Love that. A lot of things that we can dive into there, a lot of threads to pull on, but some of the things I'm hearing is, starting early with intentionality, setting people up for success, thinking about, kind of the future, of your company and what that looks like. One, I love it as, kind of a fellow co-founder, like having a vision for what you want to create in the future. But, why were those things important? Can you talk maybe a little bit more about like why those things, came to mind?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, for additional context, I'm a first-generation American on my dad's or my mom's side. And so when I graduated from college and dove into corporate, I didn't really know what I was doing, quite frankly. I didn't even know I could have a mentor. The words career coach had never crossed my mind. And so I was figuring out a lot on my own, and I did a lot right. I made a lot of mistakes, but looking back, I worked with really great leaders, and I worked with leaders who had, room for improvement. And I learned from both scenarios. I learned what kind of leader and manager I wanted to be and what I didn't want to be or what I didn't want to bring into my company if I ever started my own. And so when I think about building a team that will last for whatever span of time that is, whether they're there for a year or 2 years, whatever, it was really important for me to focus on leadership and defining that for myself. And I think it's especially important in the agency world. Marketing agencies notoriously have very high turnover. People don't stay very long. And I'm not trying to, change the entire world of agencies, but I do think there's a lot of opportunities to see what other agencies maybe aren't doing as well and see how we can be better for our employees.
I've always wondered why that stat's there, because I've noticed that there's a turnover that's rather high in market agencies.
Yeah.
I really wonder what's the root cause of it, because it just seems like it's just like dramatically not as good compared to like a marketing org in a normal, not agency business, basically. I've always wondered why marketing agencies struggled more with this. Have you seen any indicators as to maybe why they struggle with this more than the average marketing org?
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely agree. And I've worked for a few, and I will say burnout is probably one thing that agencies really, really, really have to watch out for. The problem is that, an agency could have like 50, 75, 100 clients and not actually have the number of team members they need to support that. And so employees are expected to like pivot from project to project really quickly and get more done in one day than like a normal marketing org within an organization. And I don't think there's the right amount of support there to help them.
Yeah, I think that's a good indicator, because I guess like when you earn a marketing team at a company, you got one client. It's the company. Where like in a marketing agency, like they want to grow, which means more clients, but that doesn't necessarily mean the headcount's going to grow at the same rate that the business's clientele list is growing.
Exactly. It can be tough for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably also reflective of the business development cycles too, because you can kind of like forecast and plan, but if you have a good month of sales, like your demand's going to spike, and then if you're being intentional about hiring and it takes a while to get people ramped and on the employee side. So it's by nature, like this is jagged, whereas like hiring can be smoother. and they don't always line up perfectly.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
Now, am I just speculating here? You've got a little more experience. You got a lot more experience actually than me than this. So do you think some of the hesitation about hiring more is that they're concerned about over hiring in case like certain deals don't close or they lose clients? Now there's not enough work to justify the headcount. Do you think that's part of why they try to keep it so lean and therefore burnout happens?
I can definitely see that. Even when John was mentioning, like the hiring is smoother and sales is more jagged, it's kind of that chicken and the egg situation. Like, do I hire hoping or like forecasting that it'll have a good month? Or do I wait? And then you have that ramping up period. And then on the other end of, the coin, it's like, okay, well, I hire, let's say 2 people because I have this really big client that comes on. Maybe they're not on a retainer of any sort. So that company could like leave us in a month and then you're stuck with 2 more employees. So it definitely is like a valid concern and challenge. It's definitely something we're going to have to tackle, but it's what makes agencies unique.
Yeah. So I'm sure this is going to be, John, tell me if this is stepping on the toes of one of the questions you've got planned here. But I was kind of trying to figure out how do agencies balance this need of trying to get their hiring paced right with the business development, with also like how do we create a diverse and inclusive culture at our company at the same time? Like those are 2, for lack of a better word, in the context of human resources, monumental tasks. So like how do you balance both super important tasks?
That is a really good question. This
I'm also sure we could do a 4-hour TED Talk about this also, but at a high level.
It's important because we want to hire intentionally. Like intention is a big value for us. Whether it's hiring or like who we decide to work with as a client. I don't have the answer now, but I will say that we're going to have to think about it before we start hiring. I think that's one piece of the puzzle that when I've worked at agencies, I don't think those leaders were really thinking about, those managers specifically. They just knew they needed somebody, so they just brought somebody on. But you might not be bringing on somebody who is willing to grow with the company in the sense that you're looking for. And that's where intentionality comes in my opinion.
Well, of course, everybody can make sure to follow Brianna Doe because you do document your career pretty publicly. You journal a lot in your content. I've noticed. You and I have
that.
Yeah, your content is not like here's 10 ways to do this. It's like here's 10 ways to do this that I picked up on after failing it 90 times. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's relatable, and you talk about like here's how to do it, but here's how to learn how to do it, and here's how I learned how to do it as a example for you. So that's why I think your content does so well, and why you have so many followers and views and engagement is because your content is, you don't speak in platitudes, you don't speak in get rich too, you don't speak in I don't know, like you let people know how hard it was and how hard it is. It's not
really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why I think that's why I get along with you so well, because I hate content creators that like they neglect the fact that they're like nepo babies, or they're like they neglect the bring, which is fine if you were, but like they neglect to bring up the full picture.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, I do appreciate that, because I know when I first started like posting on LinkedIn, first of all, I thought I'd have like 5 followers and 3 of them would be my family. So my plan was to treat it like a professional journal, and I've kept that, even though my family doesn't even follow me actually, but I've kept that even though I now have more than 5. But I think that's important. I don't love generalizations, and I think when it comes to careers and professional journeys, it's extremely nuanced. Like my journey has been a lot different than yours, Evan, and than yours, John, like for a variety of reasons. So it's important to make sure that when we are like putting advice out there, talking about our experiences, we keep that nuance in there.
I agree. I think this says a lot about how you're going to be as a leader, agency owner. Also, I think that's people are going to be lining up to work with you. Hell, I might even apply when you're ready.
You don't have to apply. Just message me and be like, I'm ready, and I'll just.
You let me know when you're ready. We'll talk. But Evan's always looking for more side hustles.
Hey.
Yeah. Sorry, John. As I like leave Worklyfe on a live stream. I'm kidding. No, I'm not
you just pulled the reverse Uno card. This started out as an interview for Brianna, and now you guys are cool.
I know. I'm playing both teams.
My mom used to work for the DOD. You don't think I know how to manipulate a situation?
Well, one thing, just kind of going back to some of your content, Brianna, as well, is I think what I've noticed, to Evan's point about how it's, almost like a journal to a degree. There's such a large degree of authenticity to that you just can't fake, and I think going back to kind of the idea of like, well, how do you kind of intentionally build culture? How do you kind of create an inclusive culture? The toughest cultures that I've been in are the ones, and frankly, the tough ones to perform are the ones where I've had to be one person at work and a different person in, my personal life or in my, kind of personal relationships. And I think, as you like grow a company and as you, try to attract talent and as you try to attract clients even, it becomes really challenging to, be two different people. It's mentally taxing for sure. But then also you almost have to like keep two streams of like messaging and language and like all the things that go into like building a company. And so I love that like you're taking that kind of authentic approach, because like the people that enjoy that are going to be attracted to that. The people that don't, they're not, and like it's not worth the effort in a lot of ways to try to attract the wrong people to your business.
Well, one, I appreciate that, and two, I completely agree. It's the best way to qualify or disqualify like a potential hire or a client before you even talk to them. If you don't like what I talk about online, you're probably not going to like working with me because I'm going to sound the exact same. So
yeah,
it saves us both time, and it code switching, as you mentioned, is really taxing emotionally and mentally. And why should I have to do that in a company that I'm building or put other people in a position where they have to do the same thing? I think people, when it comes to work and productivity, people work best when they're allowed to bring their full selves. I know it sounds cliche, but bring their full selves to work and not have to worry about code switching. So
well, I think that's how you and I met, because you and I we often would riff on in the comments section about like the reason, like when people would get in our comment section saying like, for lack of a better word, like they disagree. That's the nice word I'll use.
Yeah,
but
it's very nice.
yeah, they're bigoted. Like the people in our comments sometimes will say things that, people like, how do you put up with that? And I think you and I have a similar response of like, I'm just glad I found out now and not later, because I would have found out eventually anyway. It's so, instead of my real self seeping through the cracks at work, and then that creates conflict because you didn't know that about me, and I had to find that out months into the gig, I'm just going to present that all at once. So therefore now I know not to waste my time with you if you're going to have a problem with like a core part of my identity or my morals or belief structures, so on and so forth. We both benefit, like literally even the bigot benefits, because I'm sure they would have stress too from that situation. Yeah. So like it's a win-win situation. And I think, I don't know, sometimes some people think that that's like, well, you're being like, I've been accused that sometimes it makes you think you're arrogant, or like, I'm so good, I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I've been told that that's what sometimes it comes across as. And it's like, it's not that I think I'm the best. It's that I know who I am, and I know that I am not for everyone, and I'm content with that.
Yeah.
So I would rather figure out who I am for and who I'm not for now, instead of dealing with it later.
Exactly. Well, one, you are the best thing since sliced bread, and two, it's true. Like when I was job searching earlier this year, I didn't change my content at all. I was told by some people to post more stuff about like why I'm good at marketing, like what I can bring to the table, all this stuff. But I continued to just talk about leadership, because if people were going to look at my LinkedIn before an interview, I wanted them to see what kind of leader I want to work for, what kind of company I perform best in, and if that wasn't going to be a fit, then I'd rather us both know up front. So I completely agree.
Yeah, it makes life easier.
Yeah. 100%.
It also makes it more fun. I like to work at places where I can be myself. John's heard all of my terrible jokes. I've heard all of his terrible jokes.
But it is fun.
I don't have terrible ones.
It is offensive.
Any of my terrible jokes, because there are none.
John's aren't terrible. They're actually pretty good. They're dad jokes. That's why I say they're terrible. John is well, there's a reason why. I don't think that people realize this. But like when I click this button, his job title is Dad Joke Manufacturer.
I love it.
Mine is not a dad.
I love it. Why didn't I get a fun headline like that?
I don't want to insult you.
Fair.
It takes I know you well, but I also like respect you and look up to you. Whereas John, I'm like, eh.
If you respected me, you'd make fun of me, Evan. That's all I have to say.
No, I respect John. John's just how do I put this? We roll out the red carpet for the guests. John's like just here. Like
I'm gonna go with my genre of humor is too sophisticated, and that's why you can't appreciate it.
No, you mean your genre?
Yeah, there you go. See, it's contagious.
Oh my gosh. This is a problem with putting marketers in a room together.
Also, I work for a company that has 3 dads as the founders, so
Okay,
it's a disease.
Exactly.
The person who has the world's best birth control and contraceptive, homosexuality, is becoming a dad joke creator.
I love that for you.
No, thank you. Do you think dad jokes will play into your culture at verbatim?
I don't know if Alexis would stand for that.
No, she wouldn't. We got to get Alexis on this too. She's fantastic as well.
Yes, really great.
So speak to me more about, have you had any, how do I put this? Has it shown up in the interviews of like a negative perception of your content on the internet? And if so, like, how did you handle it?
Job interviews, you mean?
Interviews, clients, potential employers. Yeah. Like, have you ever had any like, well, we really wish you wouldn't talk like that on the internet?
No, I did. So with clients, it's actually been the opposite.
Okay.
A lot of the people that we're speaking to love my content and find something in it that resonates with them, and that's why they want to work with us, which I think is really exciting. Leaders and managers, not during the interview process. I did have a job where after I started, it wasn't really, appreciated or encouraged, but that's okay. Like, I think part of the problem too is that during interviews, I don't advertise that I post on LinkedIn. So unless you've gone to my profile and looked, you just might not even have known that I have a profile. But interviews have actually been.
How do you not know Brianna Doe?
No, my last manager didn't know I even had a LinkedIn profile until like month 4. Yeah.
And they were marketing?
No, it was a fintech company. He was the CEO.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
It's fintech. Yeah.
But it's interviews, and that's why I think, pre-qualifying people just through your content is really nice, because I think I probably avoided some conversations that wouldn't have been fruitful for either of us.
Yeah, I actually started like bringing it up more in interviews if I wasn't getting that lead or interview like through my content. Or I would even like show examples of previous content as much as I possibly could as a part of like my presentation of like why you should hire me. Yeah. I would find my more edgy content and like use that as like a toe dip to test the waters of the culture at this company.
That's smart. I think that's really smart.
I want to know in the interview process if this is going to make it go yikes or yeah, I see where he's coming from. And I want to know which one. Yeah,
exactly. So, I think it's really important to know what you're looking for. Like, know what are the deal breakers, non-negotiables for you, and what are you looking for in a company too.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've built a blueprint for yourself to find cultures that make sense for you. Do you think that this process of like, I found out how to build a blueprint for me that works for me, do you think that's going to help inform you figure out how to make a blueprint that works for more people, at least partially, in terms of like now that you're on the other side of the table?
Yeah, actually, yes, because I think what Alexis and I value will play a big part in the values that we choose to embody in company culture, but also just generally speaking, my goal when we start hiring is to encourage people that we interview with to know what they're looking for in a leader in the company so that they can bring the right questions to us so I can give them the right information. So I want to make that intentionally make that a part of the conversation too, understanding what they're looking for and helping them figure out if it's a good fit for them too. Because I know all of our values won't be the same, but at least knowing where the other person stands and what they're looking for will be really important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Evan.
I thought you had something. I'm gonna let you go. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I'd love to maybe dive into a little bit is just kind of the importance of, from a business perspective. I think there's a human side to inclusivity that's really important, right? But I think a lot of early founders don't think about the importance to their business early on. I think that a lot of times they think of it as something like, down the road when we hit 100 people or 200 people headcount, we'll hire a consultant to come in and do some trainings. And that's how they think about, DEI efforts and things like that. And so I'd love to talk a little bit more about just, why it's important kind of early in the DNA of a business to factor this in from a business perspective, because I think there's a lot of practical kind of outcomes that come from having an inclusive focus in your hiring too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So if you talk to Alexis, my co-founder, she will tell you, and you ask her what it's like to work with me, will definitely tell you that I'm very systems driven and process driven. And part of the reason for that is I fully recognize that we're a 2-person agency right now and that it's just us. But if our goal is to scale and grow, I believe it's really important to set up all those systems and processes at the beginning, set them up so that they're scalable instead of having to go back when we have 100 clients or whatever and fix everything to make it work for 100 different brands. And that's from things as simple as setting up our HubSpot and like making sure our pipeline is clean, all the way to what kind of company culture we want to start building with just the 2 of us. And so from a business perspective, I mean, if you care about the bottom line, you care about your processes and you care about how you're going to scale effectively without burning resources, bandwidth, whatever. Why is inclusivity any different? Like, why is your company culture any different? If you build your company culture for 3 people that all look, sound, talk, feel like you, it's going to make it a lot harder to make yourself look like an appealing company for people that don't look, sound, talk, feel like you, when you're hiring that 75th employee. So putting in the work ahead of time and laying that foundation only makes it easier along the way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think in a lot of ways it goes beyond even just the hiring process. I think in a lot of ways, like that's like the most easily identifiable way to look at a company's like focus on inclusivity or diversity. But I also think of it as like, well, what about the products you're building? Like, who are you appealing to? Like, you're trying to sell a product, so are you building products for people that look and talk and act like you, or are you casting a wider net in who you're actually attracting as customers as well? It's really kind of like kind of tempting and just really practical early stage as a company. Like, when you're getting off the ground, you're like trying not to go out of business. You're trying to figure out like, where is that next check coming from? It's really kind of tempting to kind of take the easy way out and hire someone that's a friend or comes recommended from your network. And the downside to that is that, well, what ends up happening is you end up limiting your options later. And so to your point, like as you start to get to 50, 75 employees and look back, it makes it a lot more challenging to change some of those like ingrained habits as an organization. So I would argue that like when you think about and I'm not speaking to you, I'm more speaking to maybe anyone that's in the audience. But when you think about like, okay, why is it important to kind of earlier on in a company's growth path, like build a blueprint for inclusivity? Is because like, well, if you look at it just from a TAM perspective, if you're just attracting customers that are like sexy logos or that look and talk and act like you, you're actually missing out on a huge portion of your potential market.
That's a really good point, especially with marketing. Just think about like persona development. That's why it's so important to not just focus on, I feel like, the usual standard demographics. Like Todd lives in Montana and likes Ted Lasso, whatever the case may be, right? It's important to actually understand the TAM and who your audience, your full audience is, so that when it comes time to market to them, you can build on that messaging and positioning a lot easier than going back and doing it from the beginning.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. Well, and I think for us at Worklyfe too, like we've been really thinking about like, okay, when we look at solutions that exist out there in kind of like the HR tech market and like the incentives market and like the market that we're in, a lot of it, pretty much every single product is top down, like, hey, you're an employee, you did a good job, pick something from our list of options. And what's really interesting is that your options as an employee are limited to kind of the whims of whoever curated those options for you. And so if you, again, want to make a product that's appealing and that serves people well across an entire market, like it's not just our customers, it's the end users we have to think about. You really have to like think about product in a way that is going to actually serve them well. Or what happens, you have low adoption, on the customer side, there's pushback, people don't feel like their products for them. And so like it's been really interesting kind of as we've even just been building product, thinking about like, okay, are we building, product for Utah tech founders, which is where, half of our co-founding team is from? Or are we building product for a very like diverse, not just within the US, but globally, population in the end. And so that's been kind of important for us to keep top of mind. So yeah, it's an interesting puzzle to figure out.
Kudos to you for keeping it top of mind. I get to you, it's a really big undertaking, right? Especially when you're first starting out. Yes, it's worth it and it's rewarding, but it is still a lot of work. Like or a lot of effort, not a lot of work, but it's interesting. Do you think how would you fix that, or how would you deal with that? Do you rely a lot on customer research?
Yeah, I think a few things that go into it. One is just, I was mentioning earlier that early stages of business, like you kind of have to go to the path of least resistance as you're like hiring or like, getting demo calls with prospects, right? And so the go-to kind of playbook is like go on your network, talk to your investors and advisors, and get meetings with people that they know, type of thing. But if your network is, again, people that look and think and act like you, that's who your early customers are. That's who's informing your product. That's who's like buying from you early on. And so I think the thing to think about in advance is like, how are you thinking outside of your networks? And how are you building your network now that 6 months or a year from now, it's going to look different than it currently is. And so the way, at least for me personally, how I'm trying to tackle this is like, okay, who are people that aren't currently in our user base or, aren't reflective of our customers right now? Like, what are their perspectives? And kind of sometimes facing the harsh criticism of like, I don't get this. Like, this feels like it's not for me, or like this, I don't like this. It's easier to go to people that are going to tell you, yes, this is awesome, especially from a product perspective. And it feels good to hear that. But when you go out to try to sell a product, like the people that said, yes, this is awesome, aren't always going to be buying it as well, And so like you have to think about like, okay, who is buying this, and where are kind of like the areas where we haven't explored yet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I never noticed that about the product stuff too much. Like, I've noticed the importance of it after the fact, but I'm not a product marketer, more of a content community marketer. So it makes sense to me why that would matter. I'm usually looking to figure out how do I make sure that the marketing is obviously like going after our ICP, but in an early stage company, I'm also trying to not alienate potential ICPs.
Yeah.
And that also includes like the who is in the ICP, not the what is the ICP. So I'm also like trying to make sure that our content is like accessible to people that like English might be their second language, they're not as native. So I try not to use like too much slang or like too many American colloquialisms. I'm trying to also make this make sense to other variations of English. When I write, to do that, a lot of that, or also like trying to make sure I'm using different imagery that includes people of different color, body types, the list goes on. Our imagery seldomly includes humans to begin with, so that's pretty easy at Worklyfe. But I think that that's something that it really touches on every part of the business. We've talked about how it affects your hiring and your culture, the product, and also just how do you market outwardly. Do you think that that's something that you're gonna, obviously I know it's gonna be something you're gonna be keeping in mind going forward in your marketing at the company, but do you have any thoughts on like tips on how companies can start to think about this? Because it sounds like you're thinking about this instinctually. So for those that this does not come naturally to, like, how do you get into the frame of mind of understanding like it's more than just the traditional definition of bottom line? There's a lot of the gray area of what you mean by bottom line also, which is the people part, the culture part.
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing I would say is to question, one piece of advice I would give is to question or challenge your own perceptions of how you think like your marketing is. So for example, just an example. So when we were building the website, I put in stock imagery as placeholders until we figured out what we were doing. And when we talked about what imagery we did want on the site, it was actually a longer conversation than I think either of us anticipated. We figured out what our goals were with the imagery that we were producing. What do we want to communicate? Okay, we want to communicate like diversity and inclusivity and the fact that we're both women of color. We want to make sure that people feel represented on the site and they can see themselves in the imagery. So whatever you just skim over and think that you're good to go, that's what you should be actually taking a step back and challenging. I think that's a good way to start challenging that instinct that you have too. And then if you have the budget for it, I actually recommend bringing in like a consultant who specializes in that, because they'll also help you see a lot of your blind spots for employees, for your marketing, for product positioning, whatever the case may be. But if it's not something that comes naturally, I think it's important to just bring in an expert if you have the money for it.
Yeah, and hopefully with time, as you keep doing it, you'll build that muscle of recognizing it. And I think it's fair to like that some people might not have it naturally because they might not have needed it to, you know? So also there's a big difference of looking at blind spots when you're the IC and you're looking at the system that you've been handed versus you're the one responsible for constructing the system. So I want to make sure people understand like this is a skill that takes practice. This doesn't make you a bad person if you're not good at this. It's a genuine thing you have to practice. There's a reason why there are people that do this for a living.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing too. I think it's really important to show, if you're the leader, it's important to show yourself grace. If you're the support of the team, it's important to show everybody grace in that situation. Because you're right, it is a skill. If it was something that just came naturally to everybody, there wouldn't be people that specialize in it for work.
There also wouldn't be racism or misogyny or queerphobia.
Yeah. It's okay. And the fact that like if a leader is asking these questions, like how can I basically work on this and build this muscle, that's the first step. And that's actually a win in and of itself, that it's even something that's being considered. So just taking it in little steps and challenging what you already have in place or what you think should be put in place is a good place to start.
I like that you're also doing this in public. That's I think that is the part that when I'm looking to vet a potential employer or client, I'm going to look at their content and see, are they the kind of person that knows that they have room for improvement? Because we all have room for improvement. I don't want to work with people that are complacent or think they've graduated from the stage of like learning new things or improving themselves. I did a lot of vetting coming into Worklyfe, and I'm sure that they did their vetting back. So I'm always looking for leaders that know that they have more to learn about the world of people, business, whatever the case may be. I'm a queer man that joined a team of 3 cisgender straight men. So like I wanted to make sure that I was coming into a team of people that like y'all are aware of this, right? Like there's a difference here.
That's the first thing you said was your list of content and links. That's like the first thing I read before.
That was just very true. I put it out there in the ether because like I don't want to find out that you're a bigot, like
Well, it's important to do that vetting, right? I mean, if I was looking for a job right now, I wouldn't be looking for a perfect manager. First of all, there is none. There's no such thing as a perfect manager. I wouldn't be looking for a perfect company. I think the biggest green flag I could find is a company and a manager that understand that they have room for opportunity in whatever area, whether it's within their like field or just as a leader, and then they're pursuing growth, because that's what I want for myself. So if I have a leader that's also pursuing growth and improvement, I know I'm going to feel more supported and valued than I am at a company that thinks they have it all figured out. So
a growth mindset on yourself usually indicates the importance of growth in the people that you are leading.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to work at complacency is a curse. Complacency kills businesses. It also kills people's spirits, I think. I think it's one of the most destructive things that a human being can do to themselves is to be complacent. I think it's harmful.
I think it's
To just
boring too.
yeah, it's
You know?
just it's not good for you. There's
Yeah,
there's studies that show if you're not learning new things, you're more likely to have Alzheimer's even.
yeah,
So like it's genuinely physically damaging to yourself to not want to constantly be improving.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now we know it's good for your bottom line. It's also good for your medical bills.
Follow us for more groundbreaking advice.
Follow us for more tips on how to deal with the United States healthcare system.
Oh my god.
I might need that job at verbatim, I think.
Right.
I'm not going to have the
Give me a
Worklyfe
call.
job after this live stream.
I might not be here. I'm going to be working at Worklife. Just saying.
New
Well-
on this episode of Trading Spaces.
I thought it was Wife Swap.
I forgot about that show.
Two equally problematic television shows.
It was very interesting. Early 2000s was an interesting time on television.
I love watching problematic reality TV because just like it's not that I'm in support of the behavior. It's for like look at how crazy we were back then.
It's pretty entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. To see how far we've come.
I love watching comedy that didn't age well because I'll laugh and be like, "You find that funny?" I'm like, "No, I find it absurd," which I find funny. I find the absurdity of it funny.
Exactly.
Yeah, who doesn't love to laugh at things that you should never say because no, it lubricates the pain.
Exactly.
John is so sick and tired of me.
It keeps things interesting.
There you go.
That's what we're going for.
Well, yeah, no one's ever bored working with me. A couple people, but they're not doing that well in their lives right now. So I guess, patterns.
There you go.
Well, I would love to, because actually that brings me to a really good point, actually. So, Brianna, I associate you and Alexis, especially since I've partied with Alexis before. You two are very fun party in the legal way, y'all. Calm down. But,
Sure.
you two are very fun, very fun people. That's, I think, which is a underrated attribute to leadership is it's one thing to be this leader that's good to work for in the sense that you feel supported, but I don't want a job at a place where my boss is, this sounds so cruel, boring, like sucks the fun out of the room.
Yeah.
So how much do you think fun plays into creating a diverse and inclusive culture? Because I think as somebody who used to do comedy for a living, like it's a social lubricant is to have fun.
I do think it's important in the sense that we give people space to have fun. One thing that I do want to keep in mind, though, and I've thought about this actually, is that fun looks different for different people. So I read this article not too long ago. This guy, I'm going to butcher the story, but I think this guy basically, he was working at a company. They wanted to throw him a birthday party. I think he was like really shy and just.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. They threw him one anyway, a big one. And I want to say he had like a panic attack or something. He had a physical
reaction.
a
panic attack and he had to go to the hospital because
and he sued and he won. And so when I think about things like that, when I think about company events, like corporate events where there's drinking involved, I think it's really important to make sure that make sure that people know that fun can look different for every employee. You're never obligated to come to anything. If you are uncomfortable for whatever reason, like there's room to talk about that. And I think that's the most important part of having fun, which can sound boring, I guess, when you start applying all these like systems and processes to it. But it's also the best way to make sure that people actually feel like seen and heard. I remember when I was working in an office, people were going out like every week. I didn't always want to go. Quite frankly, I'm pretty introverted and I rarely wanted to go. But people were going and I would feel a lot of pressure to go too. And that wasn't fun for me. Like I had a lot of fun in the office. I didn't have fun at like bars with them late at night, like that kind of thing. I wanted my time to be my time. And so that's something that's really important to us. We also have on the website, like on the influence site, that we're easy to work with. Like that's one of the reasons why you should partner with us is sometimes you just want to work with people that make it fun to work together. Because what we're doing is fun. Like marketing is fun. And there's no reason to suck all the joy out of it.
You and me could do a whole TED talk about that too. Marketing in I think the last few years became the order takers. It was like submit a ticket. Comes out the content, and I think there's been a renaissance of marketers trying to bring back we're supposed to be sitting on beanbag chairs ideating half the day. We're not supposed to be churning out like 97 blog articles a week like a factory. We're supposed to be spending more time doing R&D and brainstorming than actually developing content. That's how it's supposed to work.
Really good point. You're right, because one thing I've always carved into my schedule at work is time to just sit and think. And I know some people think that's a little bizarre, but as a marketer, that's probably the most important part of my job. And if I don't have time to just sit and be creative and brainstorm, then the marketing is going to suffer. Sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes the best thing for me to do when I'm working on a project and I get like writer's block is I literally will like turn off my work computer, turn on my PC, and start playing a video game or something. Because just doing something different and shifting into a different part of my brain, and then coming back to the project, it's like restarting your computer. I guess I get like a refresh.
Yeah.
So I think that's, if you're doing that for yourself, you can find ways to like enable that for your team of like, hey, if the best thing for you to do is to call it quits today and try again tomorrow, then so be it.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're hitting on is just kind of that idea of not treating everyone exactly the same. Which, early on in our childhoods, we're taught to treat everyone the same, right? And that's the respectful thing to do. But what that forgets is that everyone's at different starting places on different things in their life, and so if you have kind of like the same approach to everyone, you're actually like underserving certain people and overserving certain people. I think that goes back to the concept of equity, but when, and kind of what you're touching on too is this, what's popular right now is obviously the hybrid versus, remote argument that always comes up. And I always get a little bit miffed, like thinking about that, because it's like, everyone's arguing about the wrong thing. Like, it's not what is better, like is office better or is remote better? It's like, no, like, how do your people do your best work, their best work? And the heart behind it, I think, is what actually needs solved. Is it like, hey, as a company, are you thinking about how you can provide the best working environment so that your people can do their best work for your company? And so when I hear things like, hey, happy hours, like forced fun, like all this
forced fun.
Yeah. It's like, well, what is the intent behind it? Is it that like, hey, everyone, if there's better camaraderie, we'll get more out of our people. And so that's why you have to show up. That's actually not healthy. It's kind of, what it should be is like, hey, we want our employees to have fun and enjoy each other at its heart. I don't know, I've personally had experiences where it's like the forced fun goes like way overboard into like, peer pressure and, it's a topic for another day, which why I'm not a big fan of like President's Clubs and Cancun's, but, it can become very toxic very quickly. Especially if the heart behind it isn't like really for the betterment of your people.
That's a good point. When I see those conversations about like remote versus hybrid or force people to show up to every event, it is just putting a Band-Aid on the real issue. If your goal is to make your employees like connect more and they're not, the solution is not to force them to go to more events. It's to figure out what's missing like within your own culture. Remotely, like it's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and to your point too, like I would describe myself as an introvert, like maybe more towards the middle. But like, gosh, if I go to stuff, I get drained, and like I like get a little bit anxious going to big events and stuff like that. So it actually does the opposite for me. Going to a lot of events, like I need that time to kind of like recharge. I need that time to like kind of introspect a little bit and like kind of through the lens of like, hey, are we kind of creating inclusivity for our employees? Like that, I like to maybe go for a little bit, but like dip out really early, and that's kind of like my jam. So, Yeah, and so everyone's kind of different and on a spectrum almost. And so,
Exactly.
you know, again, like you're doing your business as a disservice by treating everyone exactly the same, or as if they think the same or act the same or need the same things.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
I like providing the options, and maybe that's because like I'm an extrovert, so I like it when there's options, because even I will start to feel similarly to how you two feel by doing the same thing over and over again.
Like the same
And
kind of event?
yeah, so
Okay.
like last year I went to SaaStr, and then I went to New York City, and then I went to Boston, and then I went to Detroit, then I went home. So I was on the road for 3.5 weeks.
Wow.
And I went to 4 different large-scale events. 3 were regarding tech, and then 1 was regarding another industry that I work with off of LinkedIn.
Okay.
And even me as an extrovert started noticing, like, I'm going to the same event with a different lens, basically. So even I was getting exhausted socially at that point as well. So I can only imagine how much more taxing that can be on introverts. And then to stack on top of that, I've always been frustrated by remote hybrid conversation. I've always been frustrated by the this or that debates in general with business leadership, because I went to a virtual high school for the last 2 years of my primary education years. So what I noticed was that when I switched, I went to online high school for 11th and 12th grade. My grades shot up through the roof. But that didn't mean that I thought that online high school was inherently better than brick and mortar public school. And this is before COVID. Keep that in mind too. It was that I quickly realized that why is this not an option? Why was the default brick and mortar public school? Because I had friends that would come over that I made from brick and mortar public school that were like, oh, I would love to do the way that you do school. And then I had other friends that were like, God, I would not be able to get anything done. Like, they wouldn't be able to handle that environment. They need that person there to keep them on pace. Where I was always questioning said pace. I was the kid that would take 2 hours to do math, but 15 minutes to do French. Basically, where other kids, if you didn't have a teacher in that classroom or a set start and stop time, they're not going to get anything done. Some people need the deadlines. I was good at creating my own deadlines and enforcing them on myself. Other people aren't naturally good at that, which is fine. So when I got older and started seeing the debate after the pandemic hit and we started having remote conversations regularly, I've always was so confused about this black and white thinking. This is coming from somebody who just found out they have BPD, who's notorious for black and white thinking. Like, I'm really confused why we are talking about it from a this or that perspective versus if both are palpable, if in-office and remote are options for us, how about instead of choosing which one makes the most sense, how don't we create a culture that allows for people to pick which one makes the most sense for them and when it makes the most sense for them? Because I'm one of those people that if you want me to do a meeting, a presentation, or create content with someone, in person or virtual, I'm fine. Either one's fine. I'm indifferent. But when you want me to, like, Evan, I need you to go through this CRM and fix these things, or come up with a list of influencers to work with and scan their profiles, all that stuff. But like solo work, don't you dare put me in an office. I won't get anything done. I'm way too outgoing and social and extroverted. I'm not going to be able to, even if I am doing my job and focus, it's going to take me 10 times more energy to focus at an office, knowing that there's people I get along with around me, versus at home when I can be in my little bubble. It's like I need that sign in the back of my desk, like, don't talk to me or I won't get anything done at all.
Yeah.
It's right. And then I come off as like I'm standoffish, and I'm like, no, I'm actually just trying to get my work done. So I've learned, how do I not come across as standoffish when I need to get work done? I go home.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. When options are available, like, that is the best choice. Like, giving people the opportunity to pick for themselves. We're all adults. Like, giving us the opportunity to pick for ourselves what works best for us, whenever we can, is what's just going to help people thrive anyway.
Especially if they're getting their job done well and on time. Who cares? If it's well and on time.
That's an important caveat, though. If you're not getting your job done, I guess you're coming back in the office. Like, there does need to be give and take, right? If you are saying you work at home, but you don't, obviously, like, okay, this isn't going to work. But if you hire people that you trust and they are getting their work done, just let them pick.
Yeah, that's definitely why I always make sure to say, like, if it's done well and on time. The key word is also and.
One or the other.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, your quality shouldn't go down by having the option. It should stay consistently good.
Yes, exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Or improve.
Yeah, honestly.
I think for us too, like kind of going back, this is a quick plug for Worklyfe, y'all. But it goes back to
Really?
kind of yeah, hey.
Wow.
Well, that idea of optionality, right? And so it's like everyone is so different. Like we look at it from just how do you support people on an individual level? How do you help get them what they need in life to be, to accomplish what they want, their personal goals, like live a happy and fulfilled life? Well, again, it can't be dictated top down, like here's what's good for you. And so for us, as we've been like building our product, as we've been like building our offering and thinking about like how do we do this at scale for companies, it's a big reason why it's like, hey, it's got to start with the individual and understand what they need and what they want and help them sort through that if they don't know yet. And so it's a big part of like our product is like, let's help people figure out what they want in life and let's craft a plan to actually get there. So yeah, I love that it's kind of coming full circle, and it's like again, it comes down to how do you view your people, how do you kind of support them, all those things really kind of like it permeates all parts of your business.
Yeah, I was actually that's a lot of why I came to work here too. So I found a lot of what Worklyfe said. It's like, God, I wish some of my former bosses and companies I worked with thought this way. And this tool makes it easier for them to adopt this mindset. So don't check out Worklyfe, because I came here to kind of change things for the better for the industry, which I'm sure is why John, Travis, and Todd had decided to create this. And on that note, of course, thank you, Brianna Doe, for joining us as well today, because I know that all of this hits close to home for you as well. Tell us where people can find you on the internet and learn more about Verbatim.
Definitely. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Brianna Doe. I am nowhere else on the internet. I do not have Facebook. And for Verbatim, you can find us.
You specifically made sure to bring up Facebook, by the way. Like, screw Lemon8, Pinterest. Like, that's the one I have to let you know I'm not on.
You will not find me. You really won't, though. I don't have an account anymore. And then Verbatim, you can find us at weareverbatim.com. We would love to chat with you. And yeah, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining again, Brianna. It looks like Evan's frozen because we would have heard him by now, but
yeah.
what a flattering frame to be frozen on. Awesome.
Right?
But yeah, really enjoyed the conversation. Best of luck to you as you're getting off the ground with Verbatim, and we're just so thrilled that you joined us today. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Alrighty. And with that, we are going to go to a video as soon as Evan hits play.
Oh, God.
This makes me wish I had gone through the tutorial on how to work this restream. Hold, folks.
Well,
I think we just go back into the studio. Oh, we lost him. All good.
God.
I think he's back, folks.
The internet went out right as she started talking. I was like, oops.
Your internet was like, we've heard enough of this woman. Just gonna turn it off.
Yeah, Jamie says you broke Evan. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, feel free to wait. So I don't know. I was checking. I couldn't tell the stream was still working because it wouldn't load. I'm like, maybe I'll just check and see if the stream's still live. Evan, how can you check if the stream's still live if your internet's out?
Yeah. We were saying you were frozen on like the perfect frame. You were smiling. It was great.
The one time I freeze is when I'm smiling, which is like usually when my camera freezes, I'm just like.
Same.
Yeah, my RBF. So it's always a fun curse. Well, I don't know if everybody heard what you said. Did it show on your side? Okay.
Yeah, we did. We were just about to roll the video, and I realized I think that you can do that as the admin. So you want to?
Yes, only me can do that. Yes, I will roll the video. Sorry about that technical difficulty. I need to go yell at RCN or astound by RCN after this. Stupid brain name. I'm sorry. We're not going to get RCN as a client, John. Sorry, just ruined it for you. All right. Well, on that note, Brianna, thank you so much for being here once again. John, remind me to ping Alexis to get her on here. And Brianna, remind me to pitch you to hire me. Okay, all right.
Perfect.
Bye.
Bye.
See y'all.
Do you know what motivates your employees to perform at work? Do you know what inspires them and keeps them engaged? Many leaders don't. Sales managers have to constantly think up creative new sales incentives, and HR teams strive to help people feel valued, appreciated, and happy. Millions are spent on various initiatives, but it's mostly a guessing game, and it often misses the mark. More than 45% of people feel that their needs are not met at work. 34% of employees are actively disengaged, and 29% are actively looking for a new job. How do you tap into people's intrinsic motivators to drive performance? How do you reward people in a way that meets their individual needs without breaking the bank? Worklyfe has the answer. Worklyfe is an employee motivation and individualized incentives platform. We help companies link business objectives directly to their employees' unique intrinsic motivators to drive business performance. By tapping into what truly motivates and inspires people, companies can create a win-win scenario just by spending differently than they are now. Let's start with employees first. Worklyfe uses positive psychology to help employees identify ways that they can improve happiness and tap into what truly inspires them. Our science-based framework guides employees through a process of uncovering their motivators, setting meaningful goals, and tracking their progress towards them. In order to provide a distinct path toward making their goals a reality, we enable employees to open a work-life balance, a special bank account dedicated to storing sacred money for the passions and pursuits they've identified. Employees can use their work-life balance to accomplish whatever's important to them, such as travel, education, or experiences. With this approach, choice is offloaded to employees and eliminates friction for fulfillment. Leaders no longer have to manage reimbursements and receipts or cobble together multiple vendors to make everyone happy. With this established, we're now ready to motivate. We give companies a number of tools to align their business objectives directly with their employees' dreams and passions. They can contribute to employees' work-life balances through incentives, reward programs, and various fringe benefits and entitlement programs. For example, you can run sales contests through Worklife's incentive programs, which will allow your reps to see each other's progress towards the objective and the personal goals that motivate them. When you're ready, just pay out the incentive in Worklyfe and watch as your reps live out what matters to them. No more ordering or redeeming or coordinating or reimbursing. You can create anniversary and birthday programs to automatically reward and celebrate employees at key milestones. Employees can attach something personally meaningful to upcoming milestones, so they have something to look forward to. You can also make spot rewards and spiffs more meaningful by rewarding people through Worklife and contributing directly towards the dreams, passions, and goals that motivate them and make them happy. Every initiative you create in Worklife helps employees feel more connected to their work and more motivated to achieve their goals. When employees are happy and motivated, they're more productive and engaged at work. This leads to better business results for the company, as well as a more fulfilling and rewarding experience for your employees. If you're looking for the best way to improve employee happiness, productivity, and engagement, all while consolidating costs and maximizing impact, then Worklife is the right solution for you. Book a demo or click to learn more about how we can help you create a more productive and flourishing work environment for your people with Worklife.